Hello, fight fans. We're here. Another edition of Boxing Chit. It's myself, Joshua, and we also have Boz here representing Boxing Haven. Be sure to check that out as well. Facebook and check out his YouTube channel as well. So, Boz, it's good seeing you. It's been a while. I missed out on the last one. Had a bit of
Yeah,
the itis, as we say. Got been a bit
Sandman,
sleepy. Kind of slept.
Sandman gave you a visit. You can say that, put it that way.
So yes. So back in the mix here. We're gonna keep this thing going. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Weather's been rainy and gloomy here. So I
yeah,
take it it's
here
probably
too.
like that there. Okay,
Yeah, it's
cool.
been pretty, yeah, dull weather, pretty, yeah. Well, today was a little bit better, but yesterday, and it's worst day when it happens on Saturday, you cannot really go anywhere. Well, not anyway, not
Yeah,
outside. You can't be outside much, so that sucks.
yeah. Forces you to stay in and watch some boxing. So
Yeah.
speaking of that, of course we're certainly looking forward to discussing some of the great fights that took place over the past couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, we can
Yeah.
actually go down the list sort of in a descending order. Now, shout out Martin Dunstan. Appreciate you stepping in, my friend. Yeah, definitely good to have you here. Let's kick things off with, of course, the big fight of the previous weekend, which was Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce, and this was
Yeah.
in my opinion, a very interesting and exciting matchup on paper, just given the stylistic differences between the two.
Yeah.
Both of these guys are big guys, and of course, Joyce is a little bit bigger. I think that one of the surprising things leading into the fight for me was seeing them standing next to each other. That just kind of shows you that the juggernaut name is certainly apt for Joe Joyce
Yeah.
because he looked massive over standing there next to Joseph Parker, who's 6'4", and he's like two
Well,
thirty two
yeah.
forty himself,
I'm
and
not sure if he's really 6'4". That's what I was talking about.
yeah. So and I
Yeah.
was feeling that same type of way. So they have him listed as 6'4". Maybe he's more
Yeah.
in that 6'2" range,
Yeah.
realistically.
Maybe 6'3" at best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree. So yeah, you could just see that the massive size difference between the two, and maybe kind of want to look back and see how Joshua and Joyce looked, or Joshua and
Yeah.
Parker looked standing next to each
Parker.
other.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's where I first kind of noticed this because I
yeah,
thought, well, Parker is looking smaller
mhm.
compared to Joshua than I thought he would because it's supposed to be 2 inches, only in height.
Yeah,
But no, it didn't look like that. It's
yeah,
more like
yeah.
3 or 4 inches.
Yeah, sometimes it's like that. It's pretty interesting. It does on paper. Some of these guys, their height may be different than what it actually is, and you see that kind of change. I've seen that kind of change even on sites like BoxRec or whatever at times.
Yeah.
So that definitely is something interesting. But yeah, taking that into account, yeah, excellent matchup from a stylistic perspective. We were actually I know we were looking forward to this. If you're a fan of heavyweight boxing, I thought that this would deliver in some capacity.
Mhm.
It had that boom potential, but it also had a bit of bust potential as well, as far as sometimes with the heavyweights, especially with the likes of Joyce and Parker, they
Yeah.
had the potential for also making it a sort of long and drawn out fight with not as much sustained action. And leading
Mhm.
into the fight, I actually favored Joe Joyce because I love the work that Andy Lee has been doing in terms of helping out Joyce and increasing his offense. And his offense was on display somewhat in this fight, but as Martin Dunstan summed up, Joyce has the chin, certainly, and I think that was a factor in this fight. Now, the question Martin also included was, does he have the skill set required? So
Yeah.
I think that makes it very interesting. But given what you know and have seen, what were your thoughts on this particular matchup?
Well, I thought it was simply the wrong fight for Parker to take, especially now. Even though he has now been undefeated for a while before this fight, anyway. I think he had like 6 fights without a loss, something like that.
Yeah.
And but to match him up against a guy who is not only bigger, heavier, but also has such a great chin, it
Yeah.
wasn't really the best, and it's quite popular in UK, So
Hmm.
this fight was in UK, so it was so hard for Parker to win this fight anyway. Even if he hadn't gotten knocked out. I doubt that even if he had won like 7 rounds, I don't think he would have gotten that decision. You know what
Yeah.
I mean. So it would have been a draw at least, if not a Joyce victory. A split decision or something. We've seen those crazy decisions before, also in UK, and so many draws. That shouldn't have been draws and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, so but anyway, still Parker showed that he's a pretty good fighter, but simply doesn't have the big power. One thing, and he doesn't when he's hit, of course, by a juggernaut like Joyce. You go down. I mean, when you are hit with a perfect punch, and juggernaut does have the necessary power. Maybe not the hardest puncher, out there, but certainly has, what it takes to put you away.
Yeah.
Especially a guy like Parker, who is not a big heavyweight. So
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, yeah, I agree with you there. And shout out to Steve Dutch or Dutch. I could be butchering that, but
Deutsch.
shout out Steve. Shout out Steve. Appreciate you dropping by, buddy. Glad to have you in here. Steve says, "Hello, guys. Pleasure to listen to you. Can you believe how solid Joyce looked at 270 something pounds?" Yes, that I have to give it to him. I've always felt that Joyce, of course, is more athletic than many people probably think just seeing him. And yes, at times some of his punches do look fairly slow. I guess it doesn't matter how long it takes to get there if it actually gets there because his power seems to be truly legit. And he was able to close or potentially break Daniel Dubois' orbital bone in their fight. And I think that kind of showed that his power is real because he was mainly working behind the jab in that fight. But yeah, with this Parker fight, man, I think that Joyce, he actually kept walking him down. I mean, Parker had some very, very good moments, and he actually landed some very big shots that may have actually troubled or dropped a different heavyweight. But
Yeah.
in this case, man, Joyce was able to eat those punches like snacks. And I think that's the glaring thing right there. So regardless of what people think of his skill set, his ability, of course we know he was an amateur and all that stuff, and he lost to Alexander Usyk in the amateurs and everything. I think that his power is certainly real. His means for being able to withstand punishment, because some of those shots it was like they just essentially bounced off. And Joyce, I don't think was ever truly hurt in the fight, even though he was taking some big stuff. And I think that essentially became the downfall of Joseph Parker. And I knew it would be the case. You could just tell it was going to be a case. Okay, can he keep this movement up the entirety of the fight? Because we have seen that Joyce, he's been able to maintain his stamina pretty well in the fights that we have seen. I don't know if he's been truly troubled. Even when Daniel Dubois was, or in that matchup, Dubois was really going forward offensively. I believe Dubois thought he was going to get him out of there early, but Joyce, he
Yeah.
withstood that and he just kept coming. So I think we saw that Joyce is most certainly for real in this particular fight. And I think that he makes it a pretty good matchup for anyone at the top. So I would put him as like the in that 4 to 3 range as far as the heavyweights that are out there right now, because I think this fight and the way he went about it kind of solidified it for him. And I think that makes it interesting coming up because he wants Usyk, he wants Fury, he wants a title, and hopefully we can get that made. Of course, with
Mhm.
Frank Warren being involved, Fury versus Joyce, that could be a possibility. We
Yeah.
will see, of course, but I would actually like to see that, or Fury versus or Joyce versus Wilder or Joyce versus
Yeah.
Anthony Joshua. Hopefully, we can get some combination of these fights.
With Fury, he's a guy is such a head case, so unpredictable. Who knows? I mean, what's this nonsense about him fighting Char? Come on, Char.
Oh
When,
yeah.
like when did that guy last have a really? Fight that was kind of somewhat relevant.
Yeah, I didn't
That
even
was
know he
like,
was still fighting, as a matter of
yeah,
fact, until they were
he's
talking about
old. That's right, he's old. I mean, by
it.
now, probably 40 or something.
I think he's 30s. He's probably like 36, 37, somewhere in that range. But he's been
Maybe.
very inactive. I think I heard on another
Yeah.
stream he's only fought twice in the last 5
Oh,
years. So I
Jim.
didn't know he was actually still active, to be honest with you. So that is a
Yeah.
very weird matchup for Tyson Fury, I would say.
And not the least, that Char is so much smaller. He's, I think, under 6'4" or something. So, come on, that's so ridiculous. I mean, such a mismatch that would be.
Oh yes, yes, indeed, indeed. Shout out to Andre Rodriguez. Appreciate you jumping in, buddy. Shout out to Fight Night Scores. Thanks for dropping by. Check out Fight Night Scores. We just did a scoring of Nigel Benn versus Chris Eubank
Yeah,
too. Good matchup there. Very good matchup and close fight. So shout out to Fight Night Scores. Be sure to check them out. Join the website fight-score.com because you can actually sign up and be a part of the group when we're scoring these fights because it makes it very interesting to see the varying scores that everyone has. So appreciate you dropping in Fight Night Scores. And yes, as Steve, you mentioned that Parker has showed some tremendous heart. Yeah, I think he did. He certainly tried to stay in there and do what he could do. It's just the punishment kept coming, and I think that Joyce does a pretty good job of cutting off the ring than it may seem. He's not super swift to the eye, but he's definitely he can move well, and he's athletic, more athletic than people give him credit for. I would say, and I think that showed in this
yeah,
fight. So he makes it very interesting for the heavyweight division moving forward. And since we're on that topic of heavyweight division, of course, we know that, as you mentioned, Tyson Fury is, I guess, expected to take on Manuel Char or whatever, but we'll see how it goes. But there was the potential for Tyson Fury to take on Anthony Joshua. Tyson Fury's
yeah.
team sent over a contract. I guess they wanted it signed in 10 days. And Joshua and his team hadn't gone through or weren't able to make this 10-day deadline or whatever it may be. And therefore, Tyson Fury has said that the fight is not happening. And Anthony Joshua has actually come on and put out that he will sign the contract. So it's just a matter of, I guess, getting all the back end stuff going. And of course,
Yeah.
Fury, he was semi-retired in a sense. I know we've had discussions on, is he retired for real? He just can't seem to make his mind up at the moment. So I like the potential of that Fury Joshua fight. I think it could still be a big one, but at this point, I don't know where Tyson Fury's head is as far as who he really wants to face or what he's actually
No.
trying to do. I mean, with what he's doing, I think he might be better off just going ahead and trying to do one of those matches with Francis Ngannou of the UFC.
Yeah,
Because,
just
that'll
for the
add to
money.
the circus
Yeah,
and
a
captivate actual circus act
PR
going on.
stunt. Yeah, yeah. Maybe he should rather send his old man to fight Anthony Joshua. I think he would be readier to step in there. John Fury, even
Oh
though
yeah.
he would probably get his brains, knocked out. But anyway, maybe his cousin even. What's his name? Huey. Yeah, Huey.
Oh yeah, yeah. Huey Fury. That'll be interesting. Yeah. But yeah, it's just been crazy. So Andre Rodriguez says Joyce with that hunger, chin jab, and Ishmael Salas in his corner is a serious contender in this generation. Definitely would have to agree, Andre. Definitely would have to agree. So yeah, the sky's
Mm,
limit for him there, and I know he's trying to fast track. Joyce at 30, he's at 37. Of course, we know he turned pro late. He was probably 34 when he turned pro, if I'm not mistaken. So, but he's
mm,
looked good, and I think he's certainly a problem for the guys. And it's a matter of being able to get one of the belt holders in the ring. right now, and it seems like that WBC belt has been elusive as far as trying to actually unify the division completely. The WBC belt has been the outlier, so we'll see. We'll see what happens, and of course, I think I mentioned this on the actual Fight Night stream as well. I would like to see Joyce and Dubois too, just only to see what Dubois does. I don't know if he can do a ton more different. And I think that he probably doesn't necessarily want that fight, but it's pretty crazy that he
Yeah,
somehow has a version of the WBA belt, even though Joyce beat him and stopped him. But it was Dubois who was able to get the title in this kind of sham matchup with Trevor Bryan. But I think that if Dubois is for real, he'll take on Joyce again and clear that air, But we'll see.
yeah. Why not? I would like to see that. I mean, I think that was still. I mean, a learning experience for Dubois, that fight
Yeah,
against Joyce. He was still, kind of developing at that time. I think maybe now he's already kind of finished
yeah,
developing. So now maybe it would be well, it was a competitive fight, but still, I think he'd probably do a little better anyway.
yeah, yeah. He may do a little bit better. I haven't seen a ton of changes. He kind of still looks the same as far as how he fights or whatever. I think he's. I think he'll always revert back to that offensive style,
Yeah,
and sometimes he's not very polished with it. So I don't think he's grown very much since that last fight, based on the last two I've seen, because I think it's been two since that time. And that WBA title is a bit misleading because Trevor Bryan realistically should have never had it. If you look at it from a
yeah.
competition and how these rankings work, I don't know, but I've heard a favor for Don King. But anyway, so yeah, that would make it very interesting. Fight
Mm.
Night Score says I said it when we discussed the initial Fury Joshua rumblings. Wake me up when they're in the ring. Bored of them. Hey, I'm with you. I'm with you. It seems like this fight has been on the radar for about 4 or 5 years now, and we still haven't got it. Nor have we got a Joshua versus Wilder, or Wilder versus Fury, or a Parker versus Fury, or you name it. There's
Yes.
so many combinations of heavyweight fights that I think would bode well for the division, but we're just not getting the opportunity to actually see them actually take on each other, which I think is pretty crazy. Andre Rodriguez says, "I'm glad I believed in him since the beginning. 950,000 euro was what I won, or $950 euros what I won in the fight against Dubois." All right, good stuff right there, Andre Rodriguez. That was a great pick right there. I think some people were sleeping on Joyce in that particular fight and what he could
Yeah,
do
I
coming
had
into it, at least.
Dubois winning that fight definitely
Yeah, I think I might have been siding with Dubois, but yeah,
because
definitely.
at that time he was smashing everybody.
Yeah,
all everybody he had fought. So
yeah, and he had a pretty good output in the first few rounds, but
yeah,
eventually,
he did.
it started to show that yeah, he was probably not going to be able to do much
Yeah, I
because
think
Joyce
somewhere
has an out of this world chin.
in the eighth round or something, he started to slow down. And
All right,
yeah,
yep, agree. Steve says, "What do you guys think of Jared Anderson? Could he make a splash?" Yeah, I actually like Anderson. I think that of the American heavyweights that are out there right now, he's probably the most promising. He's about 6'4". He moves very well, and he actually has a pretty solid skill set. He was a good amateur as well. I think he has a good team around him as far as the boxing minds that he actually works with. So I think that Jared Anderson certainly has the potential for being a future world champion. He's passed every test that has been put in front of him thus far, and also I know he wants to fight even some of the tougher fights, some of the bigger names. It's just a matter of how that all comes together team wise. But I think Jared
yeah,
Anderson is a real deal name out there that everyone should be aware of when you're thinking heavyweights and where we could see things shift here within the next 1 to 2 years, or 2 to 3 years, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that much of him, but what I did see was, he looked good in those fights. Couple of fights that I've seen. Yeah, he's a knockout artist,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, certainly. Fight Night score says, I think Dubois would take the fight, but his promoter wouldn't. Is he still with Warren? I believe he is still with Frank Warren. I could be wrong, but I believe he is. That's why I
Yeah,
would think that the fight would be a bit easier to make. Of course, it'd just be a matter of if they will make it. But you might be right at that, because I know Warren was building him up. And honestly, Warren looked a bit sad and disappointed when Dubois lost to Joyce, if you ask me, in the post fight. So we'll see if he's willing to throw him in the fire again.
well, we still got one more name, that guy that you haven't mentioned
So,
in
yeah.
UK. Do you know who that is?
As far as heavyweights,
Yeah,
no. Who in the
Fabio
UK?
Wardley.
Oh,
Fabio
Fabio
Wardley.
Wardley. Okay, yeah. Fabio Wardley. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that. Yeah,
I
he's
have high hopes for him. I think he can. Of course, he has some defensive issues. I mean, like in that Molina fight, he was kind of first hurt before but he has a tremendous not only punching power, but also the whole thing. I would say the sharpness, the hand speed, all that.
hmm
It's just pretty amazing for a heavyweight. For 6'5" heavyweight.
Yeah. I agree with you there. And Steve mentions carrying the hand low. Yeah, Anderson certainly does that at times. So it'll be
Mm.
it'll be interesting. But yeah, I like Fabio Wardley. I think
Yeah,
Anderson versus Wardley will be a good fight. I doubt it happens this soon or they match him up. But
yeah.
I like to see more of Wardley.
Worley needs a better fight now soon, because he hasn't really fought anyone. And even Molina, of course, when he
Yeah,
fought him, he was, really quite finished. But anyway, Molina was never really that good.
yeah. Good. I like to see how he does with some one of these sort of fringe type heavyweights who's not necessarily in that top 10, 15
Oh,
level.
Fringe. I thought you
So,
said French.
no, not French, not Tony Yoka. But that would be a good fight. I'd imagine a good little matchup in terms of where they are in their careers. I guess both
Yeah,
of them could still be considered prospects in some sense.
I think
Um,
he would probably knock out Yoka because he's faster than him, simply.
yeah. So maybe Bacoli, who beat Yoka, is someone that would prove to be a test for Wardley, but maybe it's too soon. That's the question.
Okoli, but he's a cruiserweight. You mean Okoli?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bacoli. Yeah,
All
not
right. Oh
Okoli.
yeah, Bakoli.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bacoli.
Martin. Yeah, he's a
Not
very.
Lawrence Okoli.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's proven himself to be very good. I mean, so far, and his
yeah.
only loss is like when he got injured. I think against Michael Hunter. So that's like,
Oh yeah. Hunter. Yeah, I haven't heard his name out there as much
yeah,
as of late.
that guy. He's like, yeah, he's very dangerous and he's so fast,
Yeah,
so explosive fighter. Yeah.
yeah. I agree. So yeah, that bodes well for the potential, at least here from a heavyweight perspective. So we'll see if we continue to see anything. Steve mentioned, guys, I think Fury needs to shit or get off the pot. I agree completely with Martin about Char, who is he ridiculous.
Yeah, he's
That's certainly a pretty ridiculous matchup for Fury at this particular stage. And yeah, he needs to certainly make his mind up on what it is that he's actually trying to do. If he wants an easy fight, then of course he'll take that Char fight. But I'm sure there are others out there who probably would prove to be a better test for him, at least at the level he's at. But we'll see. He's been very sporadic as of late with what he wants to do. And I think that holds up the division in a sense. I was mentioning one of the things I mentioned in the past streams that I think it's better for boxing if Anthony Joshua were to beat Fury. I think that is better for the sport in that sense because Fury's he's been doing all this retirement stuff and this flip flopping, and that would shake up things in a way that I think we'd be forced to get some of these other matchups that we haven't been able to get, like a Fury versus some of these other guys that are right there in contention, or like a Joshua versus a Wilder, Fury
Yeah,
versus Usyk, etc., etc. I think that that adds to the mix. But that being said, if he does the undisputed matchup with Usyk, then I like the fact that we potentially see a undisputed champion. So hopefully that happens. Shout out
yeah,
fighting highlights. Hey, appreciate you dropping in, my friend. Shout out to you. Go check out his page. He's got a lot of content there. A lot of content. It's a big channel, so appreciate you dropping by
nice.
without a doubt. Uh,
Mm,
so fighting highlight says, do you think Joyce will fight Joshua or Usyk? So yeah, that is definitely a big question. It seems like Usyk, he has the sort of choice as far as who
he
he wants
holds
to
the
take
key.
on coming up, unless one of the sanctioning bodies got involved in some sense. You know how they actually mandate that he fights such and such, and if they were to do that with Joyce, then maybe that's a potential that we could see there. But Joshua, I think he would be a good opponent for Joyce as well,
Yeah,
and I think that's a very interesting matchup there. I think both of them have their strong points, and I think it would make for a pretty exciting fight. Uh, if Joyce is to force Park or Joyce forces Joshua to show a bit of that grit he's had, pre Andy Ruiz, the first fight at least, and he'll really stand in there and he would exchange. And we saw that in the Klitschko fight. So, and we saw that with Dillian White as well. So, I think that that
yeah,
would be very interesting for Joshua if he was to take on Joyce. But I also think that the backstory as far as Usyk beating Joyce in the amateurs is probably very much appealing as well. So I like to see both of them actually. So hopefully we can get them both regardless of who wins.
I think Joyce can beat Joshua because we must be realistic. I think this Joshua is not the same one that, as you said, that he was before the first Reese fight. This is a spent Joshua. Not so much
Yeah.
physically, as
Yeah.
mentally, and fighting a guy that is so tough and so big and strong as Joyce. I can see, I mean, I think it would be pretty much 50-55, if not even
Yeah.
60-40 in Joyce's favor, even. Because
Yeah.
Joyce has less mileage, as a pro fighter also.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he hasn't yet won anything. So, I mean, a world title. So he would be more hungry also.
Yeah.
Even if that wouldn't be maybe for a world title, but anyway, yeah, it would be our path towards it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Certainly. Certainly. And I think that yeah, I think it's very interesting. Anthony Joshua, of course. I thought his size would be a major factor in that first Usyk fight,
yeah,
and he was able to land some pretty solid stuff. But Usyk, hey, he was able to withstand and keep it going, and he even
he's
did so in his second fight as well.
yeah,
When he took some big stuff. He was able to weather the storm. So Joshua isn't like this big puncher, this big knockout puncher. He's strong, and I think that you know that is an attribute in itself, given his size and strength, as far as when you're dealing with bigger guys in there, but not necessarily from a punching perspective. So, yeah, it'll be
yeah,
interesting. I
he's
don't know that he, really does much to Joyce's chin either. Joyce has shown it seems that he has a pretty solid beard all the way around it, so
mm,
it would make it interesting. I think seeing if Joshua actually tried to go for something in that fight with irregardless of whether Joyce is coming back with something big or not. So very
yeah,
interesting. Steve mentions, I feel like Fury is in danger of losing soon. He's potentially moving between eras with guys like Joyce, Rising, Usyk, even Anderson, you can be indecisive and lose. I don't want to see that. Yeah, I think you do make a good point. You know that from a how focused is he right now? Because yeah, he definitely done a lot of
Yeah,
things. I think he can certainly be. I think at least Otto Valin, he showed that you can have a moment. You can certainly have a moment regardless of where you're rated, and with a lot of the noise and stuff on the outside, yeah, it makes it very interesting for Fury, I would say. So I think you're right about that, Steve. I wonder if he still has the visa issue and can get to the U.S. I wonder if that's because I know that whole promotional thing has to weigh on them in some capacity as well. But I think he can do what he does there in the UK. But yeah,
yeah,
certainly a lot going on with Fury.
yeah.
Yeah,
It
fight
was
night
such.
score. Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I said it was such a pity that they finally had a sign for a match last year, Fury and Joshua, and then Wilder ruined it all.
Yeah,
That party. That
yeah,
was such a pity.
yeah. Fight night score says think Joyce would be all wrong for Joshua. Very interesting fight if it came off. Agree, 100%. Martin, good point. Nobody grows younger. Yep, so it's like yeah, the more these fights are prolonged, then of course that takes a bit of steam off of them, momentum wise, and from the public's view as well. And then factor in, as you mentioned, they don't grow any younger. So hopefully we get to see some of these. But yeah, I think that the heavyweight division they still have the potential for bringing about some excitement as we move forward. So we'll see though. Moving ahead, of course, on this same card, I believe it was. We had Amanda Serrano taking on um, Mahfoud. What is her name? Sorry, Mafoud. Yeah, something Mafoud. I could be pronouncing her name wrong, but she was undefeated coming in. I thought Amanda Serrano handled her fairly well. She wasn't in threat of anything big coming
Mahfoud.
back from it.
That was the name.
My food. Okay, yeah, my
Sarah.
food. So yeah,
Yeah.
my food didn't really provide a true offensive threat for her. So Serrano was pretty much walking her down the entire fight, and she was willing to take shots to get hers off. So Amanda Serrano looks good. So hopefully we get to see Serrano Taylor 2. I think that could be big if made again under the same circumstances. Let's have it happen over there in the UK. I think that brings about a crazy bit of excitement with it.
Guess what? This woman is Mahfoud is actually born on the Faroe Islands,
Oh
and
wow.
she lives in Denmark. So she is probably married. This is not her real last name. She's probably married to some guy who is because she looks like very Scandinavian to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Faroe Islands. That's good
yeah,
stuff.
the
Um,
Viking Islands.
the Vikings. Yeah,
Mm,
all right. Yeah, good stuff. But yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Then also there was I think Maxie Hughes, Kid Galahad. I was kind of watching that fight. I won't say that I
yeah,
was paying super close
I
attention.
saw that fight.
Yeah, what did you think of it? Because I know it was a split decision
Well,
in Hughes' favor, but I wasn't watching it enough to really say
yeah.
that one fighter was more dominant over the other or anything of that
Yeah,
nature.
I
I
mean, it
imagine it was
was
close.
close, but Maxi Hughes, I thought, deserved it because he was
Okay.
more aggressive. He was landing the cleaner shots mostly. And Kid Galahad, it looks like that loss to Kiko Martinez, the knockout loss, really did damage because he fought scared, I thought. A lot. I mean, like, most of the fight, he didn't really engage, didn't really throw much. He just did this and then, went in and then kind of he didn't
Okay.
really swing much or didn't take any chances. So Maxi just kind of he outboxed him, outworked him simply. It was close, but he won. I thought, yeah,
Okay, good
big
to go. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that knockout, Kiko Martinez, when he was able to knock out Galahad, that was unexpected. Of course, Kiko's been around, been in with some top level competition. But
Yeah,
I'd imagine a lot of people probably weren't favoring him going into that fight, and he was able to pull
yeah,
out a knockout to revitalize his career.
yeah. Little guy can fight. He can punch. It's like mini Tyson.
Yeah,
I know many have been called that, given that nickname, but he does deserve it because he can punch. I mean, obviously.
yeah, 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 without a doubt. Um, so yeah, uh, Luis Neri, he actually fought. I believe it was yesterday. I wasn't able to catch the fight, but he was able to get a victory. I think
Yeah.
this was his first fight back since losing to Fundora. But but yeah, it'll be interesting to see if his name pops back up buzz wise. Now, a couple of weeks before we had Stevenson versus Kante Sal, the
Oh yeah,
Brazilian junior lightweight.
that's a really good fight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so Stevenson was able to
I thought
defeat
about
defeat
it.
Conceição. Yeah, this one. Yeah, the Brazilian fighter Conceição. Him and Stevenson. Stevenson came in overweight by 1.6 pounds.
Yeah,
I did favor Stevenson regardless of the weight. It seems that he's unable to make that 130-pound limit anymore, so he's moving to 135. And I think he's a willing body who will fight anyone. So I think that bodes well for the division in potential matchups. I do think that Stevenson will become the class of 135, assuming all the fights get made that need to happen. I think he will become the class of 135, and he seems to have the frame to be able to go up to 140 as well, which would make things interesting. So who knows where he ends up in the future? But I thought that he pretty much
yeah,
dominated the fight with Kante Sal, much like he's been doing whenever
yeah,
he's put to a test. He seems to just pull out the test or pass with flying colors, as he did with Oscar Valdez. He made Oscar Valdez look very, very ordinary in there, and this is a
yeah,
world champion. So Stevenson, I think that he certainly has the goods, and he knocked off Valdez, then Conceição, who
mm,
some thought beat Valdez. I gave Valdez the edge in that fight, even though it was very close. But yeah, so Stevenson, man, so it'll be interesting. So, what are your thoughts surrounding that? I don't know if you caught that fight, and then
yeah.
what he has for the future.
Or I watched it the next day. Well,
Okay.
it was a very good fight, and Conceição was very aggressive, and he scored with some good punches, but wasn't really able to, really hurt Stevenson. And then Stevenson just kind of, especially in the last half of the fight, he really boxed well, and just outboxed Conceição and just won deservedly, of course. And it was a very good fight, I would say.
Yeah.
One of the best so far on this fall.
Yeah, yeah. So I wonder if Sal will move up or if he continues to operate there at 130. I mean, I guess this cleared out a belt or how many ever Shakira had
Yeah,
at the particular time. So someone's going to be fighting for those as we move forward. So we'll see
yeah,
where he stays at as far as the mix wise. And we get a question from Steve. He says, "Are we ever going to get Crawford versus Spence or Garcia versus Vante Tank Davis?" Now that's pretty funny, Steve. So the name of this stream is Boxing BS, and it really kind of ties to some of the BS surrounding getting some of these big fights made. And I know it's not all on the fighters; it's the promoters as well. But I think we have often seen where a fight has gained this tremendous momentum, and people are looking forward to it, and then it drags out to the point where you kind of just lose that sort of excitement that you had at its peak level because of all the back and forth on the business side of things and actually getting the fighters in the ring. I feel like there was this whole thing with Top Rank and then PBC. That seems to not be the issue at this point, with Crawford actually moving on from Top Rank, at least for the time being. So you would think that we were going to be closer to getting this fight. And I guess if you're counting numbers, we may be a little bit closer, but it seems that a bunch of things are continually thrown out. And it's still unclear if we're actually going to get the fight at this point. A bit more unclear than it was in the aftermath of Crawford defeating Porter and Errol Spence defeating Ugas. So it's just an interesting situation all around. So maybe we get it, Steve. I hope we get it. It could be delayed for a couple of months. I think people just post whatever, or I don't know if they're hearing this from legitimate sources or whatever. But I heard something about December. I know the Mike Coppinger guy, he mentioned it was looking like December or January or early 2023 or something of that nature. So I don't know, but one of the things I'll add, and then you can, of course, share your thoughts, Slave Boz. But basically, one of the things that I had come to the realization of is I was saying to myself, hopefully this fight doesn't drag on like the Mayweather Pacquiao fight saga did. But in
Yeah,
all actuality, it's been probably 4 years or so that we've been asking for this Crawford versus Spence fight. So it looks
yeah,
like it is right in that same territory. And I think that does a disservice for the sport when you have these fans willing and ready to jump in the mix there, and it's going to do well. You have the two best in the world in their division facing off of each other, and they're both two top 5 pound for pound fighters. So it's just a disservice that the promoters and all are doing in dragging this fight about and not making it while it has this peak interest. And of course, when it does come, people are going to tune in, but boxing has to get that piece of it together. And I think that's where, let's say, the MMA stuff like the UFC, the Bellators, and all that stuff, they do a better job of getting those marquee fights together than we sometimes get with boxing from a timing standpoint.
yeah. I mean, this fight should have happened, already, of course, 3, 4 years ago, something, because the bigger the fighters are, I mean, the both of them, it's harder, of course, to get this fight done, as we all know, because then, everybody, is thinking about, the risk, what if my fighter loses and stuff like that. We've already gotten so far, and they are not so keen on risking anything when these fighters get so big. But while they are still, in that phase of just about to get a name, a big
Yeah,
name, then they will rather or risk it, fight somebody really big. So it should have happened before Spence got so big,
yeah,
put away, or right after he won the IBF belt, maybe like a year or so later in 2018 or 2019 latest. So, but now, that's why
yeah,
it's so hard.
yeah. I agree
Um,
with you. That would have been after that Jeff Horn fight, and
yeah,
that seemed to be like the perfect timing. And then as we gone on, it's like each year has seemed to be the perfect timing,
yeah,
and it just keeps going on until it actually happens. And it's unfortunate that it happens in this particular manner. And as Martin has said here with the quote of the day, nobody in boxing seems to have a pen to sign anything. You can say
yeah,
that twice.
exactly.
You can certainly
I
say that twice.
I think it will eventually happen because it almost has to, because Crawford especially will not want to retire with lots of people asking him, why didn't you want to fight Errol Spence? Do you think that your zero is tainted because you didn't fight the other best guy in the division? Of course, he doesn't want that, for his legacy. And same with Spence, he knows that fight is really important for him. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I think a similar thing is playing out with Garcia and Tank Davis as well, where
well,
we get the chatter. Of course, after their last fight, both of them, it seems to be the right time for them now. But it was the right time after Garcia beat Luke Campbell as well, and we constantly go into this mix and we never get to see it. So now there's this back and forth in terms of where it's going to be fought at, and I don't know if either side is serious about actually making a matchup at this point. So hopefully
yeah,
we get it, but that one certainly I think is probably less closer to being made than Crawford Spence. I just don't see it happening, at least right now, as far as tanking Garcia. There just seems to be too many big
Yeah.
personalities, beyond the two fighters. Of course, you're dealing with Floyd Mayweather, uh, Al Davis, and then you're dealing with Oscar De La Hoya and team. So I think these are all people who know each other, have done business in the past, and still do business in some capacity. But when it comes to making the biggest fights that each promoter can, or one of the biggest fights that each promoter can make, it just seems to be stalling constantly.
Yeah. And I believe Teofimo is also at 140 now, isn't he?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
so
opted to move up to 140. So
he can potentially be matched up against one of those Garcia or Tank
yeah,
Daves.
hopefully we get that. I think he and Garcia will make a pretty interesting matchup.
Yeah, sure.
So hopefully we get that, but
Hmm.
time will tell, of course. Uh, then Big Fish Vega says, "I'll sign for them." Shout out Big Fish Vega. Be sure to hit up Big Fish Vega. Give him a follow. We just left the Fight Night stream. We were scoring Ben versus Eubank 2.
You,
So Vega, yeah, we need you to sign for him, man, so we can go ahead and get some of these matchups jumping off.
you need to have a magic pen for that, like
Certainly,
infinite pen.
yeah, yeah.
This is the law. When I sign this, then you have to fight. No other way.
Maybe they need to be introduced to DocuSign, where you can just sign digitally online. Maybe they need to be
Yeah,
introduced to that. That'll make life easier, right?
yeah. And
But yeah,
Jim,
salute Big Fish Vega.
Jim is also has something, yeah, interesting.
Fight Night Scores Jim says, I think we've got to the stage where promoters are actually prohibiting fights being made rather than actually
Yeah,
making fights. When fighters get to the level of Crawford and Spence, they should go alone. Yeah, I think that, you can kind of see that. I like with Canelo, you saw he kind of broke away with Golden Boy and all that stuff. And from my understanding, from what the chatter was around surrounding that, of course, there were differences in terms of the obligations and meeting certain obligations for bigger fights or whatever. But he's a name big enough to do his thing on his own, realistically, or in partnership, which is kind of the tone of how these fights have been made as of late. As far as Canelo, he do a deal with Matchroom here, a deal with Matchroom there, the Zone, etc. And I think you have some similar aspects with Spence Crawford, but of course with Spence, Al Heyman is the man behind the scenes, and he seems to have a lot of power as well. And we don't ever see him, but he's able to make a lot of moves there from the background. And yeah, I'm with you. Sometimes these promoters seem to have some type of stronghold. They do fights. They've matched up fighters coming up who are trying to build a name or kind of not at that sort of world stage. So that they do business. It just seems to be an issue all of a sudden. Whatever it's the big fight, and I know the money. There's a lot of money involved, and sometimes it takes time to get all of that stuff to there. But I think that we've seen and shown that this fight has interest. This Crawford versus Spence fight. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal what the deal is with them actually making this thing happen. If Fight Night Score says promoters will shit themselves if they discover DocuSign, I think that is so funny. That is true. I mean, come on now, you got to take advantage of this technology out here. And matter of fact, we need to get these judges using Fight Night Score so we can see what they're thinking with some of these crazy decisions as well. So, yeah, it's interesting things though. But yeah, those fights. We're just gonna keep pondering, keep wondering, sort of if and when. And I was listening to the ProBox TV podcast once with Roy Jones, Antonio Tarver, and Paulo Malignaggi, and Mike Goldberg. And as Roy Jones said, he'll believe the fight is gonna happen when he sees the two in the ring, and until then, he's not even thinking
yeah,
about it. So I think we're all kind of in that boat now. We have to wait till they're actually in the ring on a particular night and ready to throw gloves for this fight to actually happen.
Yes.
That's boxing for you. But
Yeah.
so yeah, that those are the main things from the past uh, couple of weeks. I think the key point. And now looking forward, of course, this next weekend coming up, we're going to have a big matchup in the UK, and definitely on the radar here in the US for boxing fans as well. Chris Eubank Jr. taking on Connor Bien.
Yeah.
Connor Bien has looked very exciting. I guess he's kind of graduated from that prospect stage. Now, I was saying in the Fight Night Score streams earlier that I do feel that, of course, Eubank Jr. has the competition edge as far as the fighters he's faced. He's been in with world class opponents, and Ben has been in with some pretty solid opponents, but certainly not to the degree of Chris Eubank. Now, Chris Eubank has come up short in some of those fights. With that being said, he's still a top level guy, I guess, from an overall standpoint. Now, I actually mentioned in the stream that I favor Connor Ben in this fight, and primarily because I feel that everything has kind of been set up in his favor because apparently it's going to be at 157 with a rehydration clause that says that Eubank Jr. can't go over 162 pounds. We know he's been at 168. You look at him, you look at his frame. He's usually ripped when he's in the ring, so you know he's dropped a good deal of weight to get down to that point. And I think that the weight stipulation could prove to be a factor for him, even though he's the bigger fighter and he has fought the better competition. But he has been at 168. Looking at him, I'm sure he has to walk around probably 180s range or somewhere in there, 170s or 180, somewhere in that range. So
Yeah.
I think
He's
that stipulation on the rehydration clause is really the factor that is really making me think that everything seems to be lined towards being, even though he's moving up, he's jumping up. It's essentially two divisions. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on that matchup and what we may see?
well. Of course, it's well, at first, I thought, yeah, no, that's a mismatch. No way.
Yeah,
Eubank is too big for Ben, and but now when I heard about that catch rate thing, I was like, oh no,
yeah, right.
Eubank is gonna kill himself, making that way, and then he'll get a beating simply. So
Uh,
that may well happen, but I don't know really. I guess he's got people working for him that are experts in this, dehydration and hydration, whatever. And
yeah,
I guess he will have to, just maybe he will be, how do you say it? He will succeed in just making way and not being totally like
yeah,
uh, like lethargic, like James Stoney against Roy Jones Jr., for instance, or something like that. you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So
Yep, I know you probably hear that dog going off back
yeah,
there, but yeah, I'm with you there. I am interested in it, in seeing it as far as a little bit more interested than I was when it first signed, or at least talked about when it was first talked about. I didn't think it was going to happen just because I was just looking at the weight divisions but money talks, so this is probably going to be a major payday for both of them. Certainly because there's a lot of interest, and then they have the right last names to make it happen over there in the UK to generate a good deal of interest in funding. So, yeah,
yeah,
it should be interesting. I do think that if all things were even as far as weight and all, uh, the the edge you probably give it to Eubank Jr., who's the bigger fighter and fought better competition. But I think there are some advantages that are not going to be in his favor, or that Ben will have with the
yeah.
weight and everything that better
The
suit him.
speed and movement are on Ben's side, and that's why I think Eubank he can, sorry, has more chances to win by a knockout, while
Yeah,
Ben has better chance to win on points. Simply,
yeah,
I don't think he can knock out Eubank really. Uh, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah, and if he did, I definitely think the weight would be a factor, the main factor
yeah,
there. but I
Yeah.
think that he can win the fight down the stretch, regardless. Just given what Eubank will probably have to do to get down to 157 pounds and then
Mm.
maintain that through the next day at least to 162.
I'm just trying to picture how I think it will play out in my head, and
Yeah,
most likely it will be, like a very close fight that will go the distance, and then one of them will probably, or maybe it will end a draw, even, like with their fathers when they fought the last time in '93. But I hope not. But I don't know even if Eubank can pull off a knockout against, because Conor does move well. He's developed as a fighter,
yeah,
definitely.
yep. I'd
Yes,
agree.
yeah. Has got good defense even now. I think good head movement and all that. So it will not be easy for Eubank, to get him out of there. So yeah, while Conor has maybe also improved on his punching power. Earlier he didn't really look like a true puncher to me, but lately he's been knocking out guys, even though those are not,
Yeah,
those are kind of old guys that he has been
yeah,
knocking out. But still, it was pretty impressive. I didn't exactly expect him to knock him out so easily, like
yeah.
Algieri, and
Oh yeah, yeah. I agree with you there.
yeah, Van Herden. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I thought, yeah, yeah. Those are certainly good. I think build up matchups. More so the Van Heerden one than Algieri, who has really been kind of a part time fighter as of late. I wasn't expecting him to come back, but the way he got taken out of there with that one punch knockout style defeat, I thought that boded well for Connor Ben, and it kind of adds
Mm,
to his mystique and aura. And I think
yeah.
they carry themselves well. So I think that you'll have some chippiness at the weigh-in for this fight between them. So that will make the build-up
Yeah.
even more there. So, and especially then you factor in the dads and everything. So I think
Oh yeah.
it'll be interesting.
And Chris Jr. especially has been doing a lot of talking, like how Nigel, he kind of was really rude and hateful against his own father, and
Oh
how
yeah,
he can't forget about that and stuff. So I
yeah, yeah,
think, I would have told him, you shouldn't really drag that stuff, in, because this is not about you and both Bens. It's about you and versus, Connor, but not
yeah.
Nigel. So
Yeah, yeah, you're right there. You're right. Shout out Rodolfo Rivera Jr. It says hella late, but better late than never. Hey, we appreciate you,
hey,
my
what's
friend.
up, Rodolfo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
always better late than never. We appreciate having your company.
of
Yeah,
course.
certainly. While we're talking about this stuff, we were talking being Eubank Jr. You can feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.
Mm,
So also we have Sebastian Fundora taking on Carlos Ocampo. Carlos
that's right.
Ocampo, yeah, that Carlos Ocampo is the fighter who lost to Errol Spence. I haven't really
Yeah,
seen him outside of that. Of course, I've seen a
that's his
number of
only
Sebastian
loss.
Fundora.
Mm.
Yeah. So, what do you think of that? Fundora's crazy output, long, awkward, lengthy
I
style, even though he
love
fights on the inside.
it.
But
I,
what do you think of that matchup?
I love it, man. I really love it. I think it will be another good banger war. But of course, I favor Fundora to win it. Really, I don't know that much about this guy
Yeah,
Ocampo, but he seems like he's got pretty solid record on paper anyway.
yeah,
And he's only been beaten by Errol Spence Jr. so far. But
yeah. And that happened quick in that fight, so we didn't get to see much of him in that particular fight.
yeah, he's a Mexican fighter, so you know what we can expect. Rather tall, so even though he's a lot shorter still than Fundora. But,
Yeah, yeah, which is probably the case for everybody in the division.
yeah,
He's a very interesting. It looks so interesting out there because of his length and everything.
yeah,
So yeah, it should be interesting. I think to beat Fundora, you gotta certainly. I think you can outbox him certainly. Or Jamonte Clark arguably had a case for winning the fight when they fought, but I do think Fundora, he's faced some better competition as he's gone on. but I
Yeah.
think that you're gonna have to outbox him, be slick, and not let him be able to tee off on you to really defeat him. But I do like Fundora just overall because he's just a very unique fighter, and hey, he's been hanging in there. He was able to take out Erickson Lubin, who was a highly rated guy in terms of
Yeah.
in the boxing world and in or around that division. A lot of people had a lot of promise and backing behind Lubin, but
Yeah. And
Fundora was
this
able to get him out there and overcome some adversity.
this guy Ocampo doesn't look like he's a really big puncher. So I don't think there's. It was worse. I mean, if Lubin is a harder hitter, obviously, but Fundora still kind of, he was down, but he came back and stopped him. So, we know that he
Yeah,
can really take a good punch, definitely.
yeah, and he applies this trade with sustained punishment throughout the fight. So
Yeah.
that's tough for. I think he'll make a tough challenge for anyone, just given his output and everything. So
Yep.
interesting. And we'll see where Fundora goes from there. And I know we were chatting about Carlos Adames. He's kind of taking
Oh,
on
yeah.
Montiel. I believe this is the Montiel that one of the Charlos knocked out, if I'm not
Oh, yeah.
mistaken. Um,
Yes. Sounds I mean, it sounds familiar, that
Yeah, I
name.
think one of the Charlos knocked him out. I can't remember which one, but I'm going to look it up. But Carlos Adonis, we've seen him on a number of occasions. He's a strong fighter. He has a pretty solid build to him. He lost to Patrick Teixeira, and
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty solid fight. And Teixeira
Yeah.
looks, yeah, he's pretty good. He
Mm.
was able to get a title, out of the whole deal, and he since lost. But I do think
Yeah.
that Adamas, he's a pretty solid fighter, and I would favor him over Montiel uh,
Yeah. Me
in
too.
this particular fight.
Yeah. As I said, in his last fight, he got a decision against Derevianchenko, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's a good win for him right there, taking
yeah.
on
So if he
Derevianchenko.
can build on that and beat this guy, even I don't really see that. Well, he beat. It was against Jamal Charlo that he lost on points, actually, Montiel. So
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking knocked out. So he wasn't knocked out, huh?
yeah, but
Okay, good to go. But yeah, I remember him losing to one of the Charlos. So okay. Oh yeah, Jamal. Yeah, yeah. I do recall that
yeah,
fight now. It was yeah, it's one of those ones that
mm,
wasn't really close at any point. I think he had gotten a good win or something. Maybe Montiel, not sure.
mm,
Coming into that, oh yeah, he had knocked out James Kirkland, and
Kirkland.
we know
Yeah,
that was Kirkland who's pretty much shot. And he
mm,
beats Hugo. Well, he had a draw with Hugo Centino Jr. Who Centino, he's all right. But yeah, so he got that
oh
fight coming
yeah,
off the Kirkland win. So yeah, I favor Carlos Adames in this fight. Um,
mm,
I think that he's got solid skills. Dominican boxer,
yeah,
they're usually pretty solid boxers as well. Much like the Cubans and such. Of course, the
yeah.
Cuban
That's the
school.
full
Yeah,
Caribbean school.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, they're up there. So yeah, interesting fight. Rodolfo
mm,
says, I am actually interested to see how Montiel does. He was giving Jamal a good fight. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting, It will be interesting to see what he's able to do and if he's able to pull out something or trouble Adames at any point. Adames, he doesn't have a super quick pace or anything. I think if they fight at Adames, at the pace of Adames, then yeah, he should pull off that victory for sure.
yeah,
And Rodolfo says, yeah, that version of Kirkland was way past it, most certainly, most certainly. But he was still in there trying to do some things. But maybe he's done now at this point for real. Um, then we have Zhu Khan. I believe it's Zhu Khan, XU.
yeah.
Um, he's gonna be making his return to the ring, taking on a fighter on the. I think this is gonna be on Pro Box, so I'm gonna check that out. I don't know what the expectation is though, as far as this opponent. Uh, but but I think that Zukan, he's a Chinese fighter. It's always cool to see some boxers come out of
Yeah.
China. It's not a boxing hotbed, at least on the global stage. I guess they have stuff over there, that and some of these fighters are maybe doing stuff there in China, but on the global stage, it's not a hotbed for sure. So Zhu, he's coming in 18-3, three knockouts. I've seen him probably once or twice, but I think maybe only once. I don't know the opponent, Brendan Leon Benitez, but he's on a 4-fight win streak. So we'll see. I don't know if I have much to say about this fight other than maybe Zhu Khan could pull off the victory because he does have a pedigree, at least from an amateur standpoint as well. So we'll see.
Mm.
We'll certainly see.
Yeah, I think I've seen fight at least once. I think live. Zukan, yeah, he's a pretty good. I mean, a rather aggressive fighter, right?
Yeah.
Offensive minded.
Yeah. So and I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about his amateur actually career, but I don't know. So yeah, I don't know a ton about Khan, but it should be interesting. I would say.
We got random acoustic thoughts.
Random acoustic thoughts. What's up, buddy? Hey, appreciate you dropping by. Good stuff yesterday on that 10 greatest heavyweights of all time discussion. That's on his page. Be sure to check that out. Random acoustic thoughts. It featured the boxing librarian and scrapbook boxing. Great discussion. So I think it's certainly worth checking out. And you'll see a lot of interesting names there. Some you're very familiar with and expect to be on the list. And then some others you may have different reservations towards. So definitely check out that stream. It was a good one that happened, certainly. So shout out Random Acoustic Thoughts. And then, so yeah, just looking a little bit ahead. Of course, we got Hogan taking on Eggington. Oh, Sam Eggington. I like Eggington. I think he brings it. This Dennis Hogan. I wonder if this Dennis Hogan, because Dennis, let me see if this is Dennis Hogan. If so, then I think it's a pretty interesting matchup. I would favor Hogan. I think he's certainly probably better on the defensive side. If this is Dennis Hogan, and I think it probably is. So yes, it's Dennis Hogan, Sam Eggington. Yeah, I think that Dennis Hogan, he's actually not bad overall. He's not a big puncher or anything, but he can box pretty well. So I think that he'll defeat Sam Eggington, who tough fighter, scrappy fighter. Sometimes he takes a lot of punishment or whatever, but he's able to withstand often. But I think that, yeah, certainly I favor Dennis Hogan, who I thought didn't look too bad when he fought Munguia. And, yeah, that was pretty controversial. Yeah. I think I actually gave the slight edge to Dennis Hogan in that Munguia fight, and I feel like they kind of screwed him over, but nothing was in his favor coming into it. It was in Mexico, so you kind of expect that, I guess.
Yeah, well, Munguia is such a beast, it's not fair to knock somebody for losing to him, even if he was stopped, knocked out.
Yeah, but Hogan made it close. It went to decision, and I think
right.
Hogan.
He was one of the few that kind of did go the distance with that best version of Munguia.
And that's funny because I haven't heard Munguia's name in a while now, it seems like. But we were thinking he was going to be taking on a big fighter.
I remember that was when I was still, following that podcast with Kelly Pavlik and the other guy.
Oh, okay.
James Dominguez. And James was very like, oh no, he was like, Munguia is no good now because he didn't knock out Dennis Hogan. Was like, what? Come on, it was just one fight,
No, I think you got to give Hogan a little bit more credit than that.
Yeah.
Fight Night Scores got to step out. Hey, appreciate you dropping in, buddy. Check out Fight Night Scores, of course, everyone. Great channel, great content, great platform, fight-score.com. Check it out. Boxing Chit podcast. Of course, Boz here, Josh here, 86 Boxing Podcast, Boxing Chit. You know the deal. We appreciate you being here, all that good stuff. So that is going to be an interesting one. Hogan Eggington. Then we have
Oh
What is
yeah,
this here
that's
that I
right.
was
In
seeing?
Australia, I think
Yes,
that's in Australia.
Haney Cambosos. So I know the timing is going to be crazy. I
Mhm.
forget what the timing was as far as when they're expected to fight last time
It
around, but of course,
was-
Australia is out there down under, as they say. But Haney Cambosos too.
Yeah,
Now,
it's gonna be interesting to see if Kambosos can do any better this time. I don't know. I wouldn't be too sure, but possibly he can do a little better. Anyway. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think that Haney is the better boxer, more skilled boxer, more polished boxer. Cambosos, I think that it would bode well for him to come out more aggressive and charged up, even if that means he's gonna leave himself susceptible to
okay.
taking some punishment. But I think he's gonna have to take that in order to dish out any punishment, because I think if it's a fight fought at in the vein of what or how Devin Haney operates, then Cambosos is going to lose
Yeah,
that all day. So I think he has no choice but to be aggressive. It's going to be in front of his hometown fans, just as the last one, and they seem to turn out in droves. It'll be interesting to see if you have the same atmosphere coming into this one. So I think, but yeah, I do think Cambosos needs to step on the gas a bit more and really try something. But I think I'm not alone, along with yourself, in favoring Devin Haney. I think he'll just be a bit too much. But I do want to see more of Cambosos. But I think this style is all wrong for him.
yeah. Well, yeah, I don't think the problem was that he wasn't aggressive enough in the first fight. He simply struggled to land, and that's of
Yeah.
course a major problem
Oh, yeah.
against a really like slick opponent, and so they have to devise some sort of plan, a strategy that will work better for Cambosos in this fight, and
Yeah.
maybe just a combination of coming forward and just standing there and waiting, being
Yeah.
more.
Andre Rodriguez says, I think Munguia still needs a dozen more fights to be ready for a title fight.
Oh no,
I think that is
no,
funny. That is funny. Hey, they need
no.
to at least put him in there with one of these top guys. After his last fight, it seems that is the next stage. So he fought in June. It'll be interesting to see if he gets a fight out this year. He was super busy as he was coming up. So he has traditionally been a fairly busy fighter. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets a fight in this year or another one in this year if he does something next year. And hopefully it's
Mm,
a name that or a big name. I think that all of Munguia's fights, they generally make for some form of excitement, some exciting action, given his style and everything. He's been boxing better under Eric Morales, so I think that's been a pretty good matchup for the two of them. So, but I think at that elite level, he'll make it some interesting fights with some of those bigger names who are bringing it to him and kind of force him into a firefight, which he seemingly has no problem getting to a firefight, or at least in the past. So I think some of that old will come out if he's in there with one of these guys, and that'll make things interesting for sure. Uh, Rodolfo Rivera says, "Haven't heard of Munguia either. He has to step up the opposition, though." Yeah, yeah, yeah,
mm.
most certainly, uh, most
Yeah, I
certainly.
don't know why he just isn't fighting, better opponents, but I hope soon now he will start.
Yeah, Andre
That's
Rodriguez
all I
says.
can say.
Yeah. Andre Rodriguez says it's incredible the time Munguia is in the middleweight division and still not one fight for any belt. Yeah, that is pretty. Yeah, he's
maybe
40 fights in too.
maybe a fight with him and Adonis would be, good.
It'd be
Good.
interesting. I favor Munguia in that fight.
Yeah.
Um, I certainly favor him. I think he would be busier than Adamas, but it'll be an interesting fight. But
Mm.
yeah, hey, Munguia, he's got 40 fights, so
Yeah.
he's been
So
putting in some work. Yeah, it's just a matter of will we see a
about
big fight?
yeah,
Hopefully we do.
about time he fights a really big one. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Rodolfo Rivera checked the box recs 2.5 years. but it's not like he was a prospect. He was the champ at 154. That is true. We really didn't get a huge fight from him at 154 either, even though he was on the come up. And I give him props for being willing to take on Triple G at that time, and that fight was blocked. But I think that would have done probably some wonders for him. Triple G would probably have had the edge, but I don't think it would have been necessarily a bad thing if Munguia lost. I think that's something you can bounce back from at his age. So we'll see if he actually gets in there. And as Rodolfo says, he thinks 2013 or 2023 is the year. So we'll certainly find out. Munguia versus Janabek. Oh yeah, Janabek. Yeah, that will be an interesting fight. So Janabek, he's supposed to fight someone. I feel I saw. I think he's taking on someone coming up. I could be wrong. I know he was aiming for the Demetrius Andrade fight. But of course, Andrade, that's not happening. And Andrade actually went to purse bid for an opponent to whom I don't know who the opponent. I don't recall the opponent's name, but he opted not to stay there at 160. He's aiming for 168. I think he wants Canelo. Whether or not that fight happens is a big question. I don't think it will at this particular point. It seems like the momentum was there a couple of fights ago for him, and it's kind of always his name has been in the mix, but it's also been kind of out of sight, out of mind at times. And Frank Warren won the purse bid for his upcoming fight that I think he's going to have, as far as I know, but I'm not 100% certain if he's going to go through it or not. But I think something is on the line for it, maybe. But yeah, we'll see. But Janabek Munguia, that would be a good one, certainly.
Yeah, why not? I would love to see that too.
Yeah, and I was gonna check real quick to see if, because I feel like so he got Denzel Bentley. So Janabek in November is gonna be taking on Denzel Bentley, which I think is a good fight overall. Right. I do favor Janabek. I think Bentley is solid. So it should make it interesting, and I think he'll bring his A game. But I would give a slight edge to Janabek in that particular fight. So hopefully it turns out to be a pretty good matchup.
Yeah. By the way, that's Johnny Beck.
Johnny Beck. But yeah, that would be a good one. Andre has mentioned. For me, it's the necessary move, but for him, who knows? Yeah. I mean, you're right at this point. So yeah, 2.5 years. Hopefully, we get something a little bit better out of Munguia. Rodolfo Rivera Jr. says, yeah, for all I know, Golden Boy going to keep him undefeated until 51-0 to beat Mayweather's record. Hey, possibility there. I'm sure they can find 11 opponents to make that happen, for sure.
Yeah.
You can certainly find 11 opponents to make that happen. So, yeah, we'll see. Rodolfo says, so Oscar can finally get a one-up on Mayweather. That is pretty funny. So, yeah, we'll see if that happens. That is pretty interesting. But yeah, so yeah, on that Kambosos Haney card, we're gonna have the Maloney brothers fighting, which I guess is to be expected.
Right.
A lot of the Australian names are gonna get out and be able to get some work in for sure. So that should be interesting to see them back in the mix. Rodolfo Jr. says, same with Gerardo Ramirez. Isn't he undefeated in the range of 40 wins? Yeah, I think he has probably like 43 wins or maybe 40, somewhere in there for sure. And of course, Zerto is going to be taking on Dimitri Bivol.
44 or something like that.
Yeah. So shout out to Dimitri Bivol for being willing to take on Zerto. And I think that's going to be a good fight coming up. Zerto is a big guy. He's a big guy. He shot up 29 pounds between the day of weigh-in and his a day after his last fight, and came in at like 203 pounds or 201 pounds, something like that. So he's a big guy. He's a big boy. So he was making 168. I'm sure that was probably a problem for him. But he looked pretty comfortable there at 175, and I think he's going to be a true test for Bivol. I give the slight edge to Bivol. I think when it comes down to, if you look at him skill for skill, Bivol is a bit more or has a bit more of the edge there. But that being said, Zerto, man, he's a tough fighter and he's not afraid to mix it up, and he has skills. So it should be interesting. I'm looking forward to that one. Do you have any thoughts on that particular one?
Yeah, of course, I'd favor Bivol because of his crazy skills, and but of course it will be a good challenge for him because of the size of Zurdo, and the fact that he is pretty good. I mean, also as a boxer, technically,
Mhm.
and but also at 175, he has so far won all his fights by knockout, which is kind of interesting. Even though he has fought some rather solid opponents also. So it seems like he's really grown into that division very well.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
his power has actually increased. Because at 168 he wasn't really knocking out everybody.
yeah. No. But he had some good fights. Those fights with Jesse Hart were pretty good. I was at the first, it might have been the second one. I was at
Yeah,
one of them in Arizona. I can't remember if it was the first or second fight, but it was a good fight regardless. But
mm,
yeah, Andre Rodriguez says I'm more enthusiastic about the four low weight divisions right now. Chocolatito versus Estrada 3. Jesse Rodriguez in the rise, and the minimum weights have tons of talent. Yeah, I agree. Hey, some of those little smaller fighters need to get some shine. I feel like the names of the likes of Chocolatito and Estrada have gotten out there, but they have a ton more. And I love Bam Rodriguez. I think he looks very promising, like a pound for pound fighter for sure. And hopefully we get to see him matched up with one of these guys as well. I know with Bam Rodriguez in his last fight, they were mentioning trying to get him on the Chocolatito versus El Gallo card. They're trying to get him on there, I guess, kind of to have him kind of showcase on the same night and there, and of course, pique more interest. And I think that he'll make for an exciting fight with both of those guys. So hopefully we do get that for sure. And then under Rodriguez said light flyweights and flyweights too. Yeah, those guys. There's some guys on there who really bring it. There's this Japanese fighter, Kayaguchi, I think it is, who I like. I saw him in his last fight. He man, yeah, high output, pretty solid guy. And there's some others in and around there. Those four divisions will produce some wars from this December onward. Agree, Andre. Yeah, those smaller guys, man, they always bring it, and they usually have a high punch output. And yeah, oftentimes they're going to deliver. So certainly, I
yeah.
would like to give them more shine, especially when you have some of the bigger names who aren't actually fighting each other in the matchups we want to see. So Rodolfo says, "Oh yeah, the Estrada trilogy fight, and then Kayaguchi is getting unification later this year." Yeah, looking forward to that. I like Kayaguchi without a doubt, um, which is overdue for the 108 class. Yeah, that's cool. And what I like about Bam Rodriguez, since we were on there, is the fact that hey, he can go down to 112, he can fight at 115. Yeah, I think he's willing to jump to 118 as well. So sky's the limit for Bam Rodriguez. Um, Rodolfo Ramirez, 44 wins, 30 KOs. Yeah, so Ramirez is knocking on the door of that 50 mark. So we'll see how he does in here with Dimitri Bivol. And Ioka is trying to get an Inoue fight too. Man, fantastic. Yeah, that should be a good one right there. Both very good fighters. I love Inoue. He's certainly one of those top five in the world guys right there. So we need to see him in the ring again and get some shine on there. I don't care where the fight happens. Let's get them in the ring for sure.
Mm.
And Andre says Ioka versus Inoue would be a major event in Japan and in the West too. I agree. Yeah, I could imagine it in Japan. I know it'll be big time there for sure. Inoue, yeah, he's a beast without a doubt. Uh, bless you there, Boz. Then
Thanks.
Rodolfo says yes, official Kayaguchi is facing Taraji, which is Number one, number two at 108. Crazy. I don't have any. I haven't seen any marketing for the fight. Yeah, you're right. That is pretty crazy. Yeah, I didn't know that was gonna happen, but yeah, Andre says Kayaguchi versus Taraji War. I think I'm saying the name right. But yeah, man, yeah. Hopefully this gets picked up by a big platform. Let me see. Kayaguchi. I don't know. I want to see who's promoting this. Hiroto Kayaguchi. So yeah, it's official. It's official. So it looks like this is. Oh, it's gonna go down in Japan. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how this shapes up. But I'm looking forward to it. I was trying to see what they have more information on the actual car. Okay, so yeah. So it's in Japan. They have some. It's like going to be a Japanese showcase. So it's going to be on ESPN Plus. So we'll be able to check that out. ESPN Plus. I like that. I like the fact that yeah, we'll get to see those guys on that particular platform. CP Freshmart will try to unify in order to be the first lineal champion in history of the minimum weight. Oh wow. You know, I didn't know that, Rodriguez. I didn't know that there wasn't one. So that is pretty awesome right there. I like CP Freshmart. I haven't seen his last fight. I need to check that out. He beat the Dunian or whatever his name is, the guy who had ran up to 54-0, I believe. I need to check that out. But I like CP Freshmart from what I've seen. I've mainly watched a bunch of highlights on him just to get myself familiarized. And of course, I think he has a cool name, but he is legit though.
It's like knockout CP Freshmart.
Yeah, knockout CP Freshmart. Yeah, that is right. That is right. You know, they always come up with some cool names over there in Thailand.
Yeah, so funny, you know, when you have this also 3K battery and all those kind of Dutch boy Jim.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, fun fact there. Then Rodolfo said his main goal, but Frank, it's gonna be tough. Yeah. Yeah, Rodolfo asked, you know why 105 never gets unified? Andre, yeah, that's a good question. Maybe all things coming together is pretty tough. And then Martin, Rodolfo, one day they have breakfast and can't make weight. Yeah, I'd imagine. Reminds me of Jimmy Wild. I remember, you know, I've done a video on him. And yeah, Jimmy Wild, he used to, man, he was a small fighter. He'd be fighting some of these bigger guys who, of course, are all still around that low and minimum weight. I remember seeing that at some points he was like 90-something pounds fighting some guys who were bigger, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. The great Jimmy Wild, my favorite Welsh fighter, I guess you can say. So... Then Andre Rodriguez says, from his perspective, is because Finito Lopez never got the lineal title there, although is arguably the best in the division's history, so probably make it tough for anyone now. Yeah, that is probably the case there. So yeah, interesting stuff coming up. And then, of course, we have Wilder Helenas, we have Mayer Baumgartner, we have Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall. I think I know where pretty much the majority leans on that end. So we'll see. We'll see if those fights really kick off. We have Lomachenko versus Jermaine Ortiz. Jermaine Ortiz beat Jamel Herring in his last fight. So he's an interesting looking fighter. But yeah, I think Lomachenko gets it done, though. I think that would be a major step up for Ortiz from what I've seen, or at least what I gathered. And it looks like Huey Fury is going to be fighting Michael Hunter. I know we were speaking on him earlier. I think it's Huey Fury. And then also in the end of October, we're going to get JoJo Diaz versus Zepeda, but it's not the Zepeda I thought it was, actually. Interesting. Yeah, this is a different Zepeda. I thought it was the one with the belt. So yeah, we'll get the return of JoJo Diaz. I like JoJo Diaz. So yeah, it's not Jose Zepeda. So Jose Cepeda is going to be taking on Regis Prograis in November. So that's going to be a huge fight. Going to be a very good fight. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. But a lot of interesting stuff out there on the ticker. But yeah, man, we just really wanted to come on to have a quick discussion. It's been an hour and a half. So, hey, it actually time kind of flew by a good bit.
Yeah.
Rodolfo says, interesting, Andre. Yeah, I think Finito brought more reputation to the 105 division when he started in his prime, when the Ring magazine started doing rankings for 105. Yeah, that is true. Finito. Yeah, that he is the class of the division thus far. So, that's good stuff.
Rosendo Alvarez.
Yeah.
He was the only guy who could really fight Finito.
Yeah. Good stuff. But hey, we appreciate all the guests. Step again, we're probably going to be getting out of here. And of course, we'll be back next week. So shout out to everyone who's joined in as a part of this discussion. Martin, Steve, Andre, Rodolfo, Fight Night Scores, Big Fish Vega. So shout out to everyone who's dropped into the mix. Random Acoustic Thoughts came through. Yeah, we definitely appreciate it. And we're going to keep this thing going. So be sure to tune in. Hey, drop by the page. You'll see Bai's page, or you'll see his name tagged into the title. So check out his YouTube. He does predictions, all that stuff. We'll be back. Be on the lookout. Going to release some more videos on 86 Boxing, of course, focusing on the histrionics. So, hey, welcome and thank all of you for actually being in attendance. And we'll certainly catch you on the next one. So you all have a good day. Cheers.
Cheers.
And good stuff.
Yeah.